6 months ago, the way that I work shifted completely due to the arrival of AI. In this episode, we're going to take a look at why and what that might mean for your work. Welcome back to Adventures in AI, where the shirts are as bright as the ideas. No, wait, where we take a light-hearted look at AI and how we can put it to work. So I'm Ollie Happy, that's still my name, and I'm still your host. And first, before we get into it, a quick confession. I planned a lot of great episodes. You will still get to see those episodes very shortly. But I realized I hadn't covered the basics. So I went back and put this episode together. If you use chat today and you put things in and you get things out, and sometimes it's great and sometimes it just seems to miss the point, this episode's for you. This episode is to give you a map of how to make use of the AI tools you have available to you today. So let's get going. Shazam. So our goal hasn't changed. We're going to look at what's possible with AI, and we're going to do it without changing how you work day to day. That's the aim. Whether you are back from episode 1 or you've just landed, this is the ground floor. This is how Claude is built, how all of the big 4 AI tools work, to be honest. And the advice that I give you today will apply to Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini, and OpenAI, ChatGPT, just as much as it applies to Claude. And how do we turn a rubbish answer into a rather good one? Get this, and everything else that we cover from now on is gravy, as they say down under. All right, so I've talked about how my work changed and how it shifted. The app that it shifted to was Claude. Claude is used by a lot of people, not all people, but it's a very popular app. And it's not a new tool on the side, although it started that way. It's now, today, where my work happens. And that is a huge shift in the way that I get things done, the way that I think, the way that I plan, and the way that I get things done. So by the end of this episode, as I said, you'll have a map of how to put Claude to use. So how has where I work shifted? We'll take a little trip in the time machine back. Back in the 90s, and yes, I am that old, I was working in Excel. I think a lot of us were. Excel was the list. It was the place that we put our work and our plans, whether they were financial or product or strategy or operational. Even our sales leads lists were in Excel. We then moved on to Jira. Jira, if you're not aware, is effectively a way of tracking tickets. It's a shared list. It's a list that's provided through a software as a service or SaaS provider called Atlassian, and the product is called Jira. We all used that for a long time. We got really into Scrum, and we worked in 2-week cycles. We planned in quarterly and then annual rhythm. Things worked well. But then our work started to accelerate. We moved on to GitHub, in my case, and a number of places that I have had the pleasure of have worked in GitHub. GitHub, if you're not aware, is the place that people cut and commit code. It's where the code lives. And it made sense as GitHub evolved to move the product and strategy work into the same place the engineers were. We had project boards, we had ticket tracking, and we had backlogs and roadmaps. It was good. It wasn't great, but it did the job at the time, and it felt great to all live in one place where the work was. I then moved on to Notion, and I think a lot of people did. Notion effectively is a merger of Confluence, or the idea of a wiki where information can be shared very easily, and Google Drive and SharePoint. Notion is a database app that creates pages that can be shared as views. It's very easy to customize, and it has worked well for quite a number of years. It's not perfect. The folks that were working in engineering didn't want to work in Notion a lot of the time. They wanted to keep working in GitHub, and therefore we had 2 surfaces, 2 places of work. Often I would find that the operational and commercial sides of the business would be happy to work in Notion, and the engineers would stay in GitHub. The shift that's occurred now is from Notion into Claude, and that is a quantum shift. That's not to say that we don't store at Right Brain our company documentation in Notion. We do. It's not to say that our roadmap is not in Notion. It is. And we create views for the different internal and external audiences we work with. But it is to say that I don't spend every day in Notion anymore. I now spend most of my time in GitHub. In GitHub, in Claude. That's the purpose of the episode. Yes, I'm back on script. So, the purpose of this episode is to talk about what that's like as a place to work and what that means for you. So, let's talk a little bit about the news because it really matters. Claude has become the number one AI for work. It is now the number one for enterprises that are choosing to roll out AI, and it's also the number one for new business adopters around the world. There is a lot of Microsoft Copilot out there. There's a lot of Google Gemini out there, and there was already a lot of the original market leader, OpenAI ChatGPT out there. But Claude, particularly through code, as we'll cover in a minute, has really captured the market, and some might say has the best models, the best large language models or AI that you can chat to and do your work with. So if you're learning Claude, you're learning the tool that's serious about business. And that trend is continuing to grow. And don't worry about the names moving. This space is still very young. It's still evolving. Claude is only a few years old. Anthropic, the business, is only a few years old. AI is only in this form a few years old. Cowork, the tool that we'll have a good look at today, is less than 6 months old. Claude Code, which is the tool of choice for now a large percentage of software engineers and people who vibe code software or create code through chat, it's only been around for just over a year. That is not very long. And so if you're feeling left behind, don't feel bad. That's where I was 6 months ago. That's where a large percentage of people using AI today were 1, 2, 6, 12 months ago. So let's get into Claude. It's good, as I mentioned before, but there is more, and I'm going to show it to you. So there are 3 places you can do your work in Claude. One of them is chat. The second is Cowork, and the third is code. And let's have a look at each of those in turn now. So, Claude Chat, think of it as the place you can ask questions. So, the great thing about chat is it is the way that we use our instant messaging. It's the way that we talk on WhatsApp with our friends, family, and colleagues. It's the way we talk on Microsoft Teams and in Slack. It was all built off the communication style that originated in short message service or SMS or text messages. And so it is very familiar to us to just type a question in and get an answer back. The good thing is you get quick answers anytime and anywhere. Each of the chat interfaces, so ChatGPT, for example, Chat or Claude Chat, is available on the mobile app. That's really handy when you want to do effectively a web search or ask a question on the go. It's a really good thinking partner, and this is something that I think, no pun intended, a lot of people could get a lot out of. It's all very well to ask a question, but what large language models or LLMs are very good at is working with the connections between things, the patterns between words, reframing what you were already thinking. So it's a great place to just pour your heart out into a document, feed it to let's say Claude Chat, and say, these are some things I'm thinking about for this meeting I'm about to have. Help me to shape this into a coherent agenda. It's very good at that sort of thing. You can organize your thinking by project, and that's really important. Projects are like the folders. You can imagine yourself setting up a project for each of the areas of your work life: marketing, admin, management, product, delivery, those sorts of things. But chat is not perfect. You do have to watch it work. It will slow down, it will get stuck, it will ask you questions, and it won't just do the work in the background. So there is an element of almost looking after a room full of chats and hopping between them, which is quite a strange way to work. It creates a real context switching type cost, and it's something to think about in the way that you use AI. The second thing is chat will fail silently. It will Large language models are very creative. They're very good at inventing connections between things. That's probably partly how they're so good at finding connections between things. But they don't tell us when they're not sure unless you tell them to. So just be very aware that you may get an answer back that looks and feels really good, but nobody's spoken to that customer before, or that's not the supplier in question, or that's not the law on that particular topic. Then we'll go on to Cowork. So Cowork is the second product in the Claude Anthropic lineup. It's the place that a lot of my work has moved to in the last few weeks. And the reason for that is that this is where you can start to schedule. Cowork is working on your laptop. Let's assume you have a laptop, and it's working with your local files and your local folders. And that means that it can take actions on your computer, on the internet, in other apps. That's not to say that chat can't do that. Chat can, but it's not as reliable. And Cowork just feels like somewhere that is far more structural and procedural. There's a list of the actions that it's going to take. It just feels like a place that scheduled work happens. However, it's not perfect either. Skills are difficult to manage in Cowork, and we'll come to skills later and in future episodes. And it's also difficult to work across different projects in Cowork. And if you're using chat on your phone, like I do, and then you jump into Cowork, you might have, let's say, a product project or a strategy project that's in chat, and you would have another strategy project in Cowork. Both of those would have threads within them. That's a lot of chats to manage. That's a lot of inboxes to manage. So just be aware of where the work lives within your AI tool of choice. Something that you might ask chat, just to go back a step, would be help me to query an invoice with a tricky supplier. Something you might ask Cowork would be summarize yesterday's emails and pull out any outstanding actions, or a scheduled task every Monday, pull last week's numbers into a draft report, or every Monday, pull my meeting transcripts from the meeting before, or from the week before rather, and give me a summary. That's the sort of thing that Cowork is really good at. It is important that you keep all your files together and you think about where the folders that Cowork is working are. So there is an element of needing to remain organized, but compared to chat, where files are just persisting within each thread and you find yourself searching for threads to find the files that you've worked on or created, Cowork is quite organized in that sense. Let's move on to Claude Code. So Claude Code is the place that you build. And what I mean by that is it is designed for engineers. To many, this is the moment that Anthropic Claude hit the market and became known. They opened up a nice interface that could be used for people who create code to talk to an AI and create code faster. They then opened that up to everybody and made it easy enough for a whole generation of people who call themselves vibe coders, who effectively create applications or build things through chat rather than through cutting code themselves, to come into reality. That's really exciting. It meant that a whole generation of people have been able to access the building of things. Building has become democratized. That's a good thing, but although you can build websites, although you could build an app that helps you to manage your getting things done, your to-do list, or to put together the board packs that you know you need to produce, or automatically curate the quarterly update for a key account that you're about to meet. The code that is created in a vibing app like Claude Code or OpenAI Codex or Cursor, which is another tool, is not production grade code. The things that are known to software engineers, the ways that they work, the guidelines they put in place are not necessarily there. The code that's created may not be very clean, so it may not run very cleanly, and you will find that you have to maintain the thing that you have built. And if you're like me and like a lot of people, you'll suddenly realize why we have software engineers, because they are experts in the design, the build, and the support and the enhancement of applications. But needless to say, that Claude Code is not just for engineers anymore, and it's a place that you can build and particularly prototype ideas very quickly. So, for example, you might say something like, okay, I'd like to mock up a landing page for an event. So that I can hand it to the design team and they can take those 3 sets of ideas and turn it into a landing page on our website. Hey, pronto. For that, Claude Code is excellent. For working with your code base, and in the case of Hugo, our design lead, talking to the code base or the API documentation and understanding what the functionality of our platform is so that he can build designs and user interfaces, then features that work with what we really have today and the ways in which it works. It's super powerful. But like any tool, particularly a tool in the AI era, although what it builds may be very shiny, all that is shiny ain't gold. So just be very aware that skills are in beta, so it's difficult to work on the skills in Claude Code, and that what you build is vibed. Unless you put in place good, solid software engineering guidelines and best practices, and work quite hard to constrain Claude and its agents to do the work in a way a software engineering team would, you will end up with something that probably is not secure enough or stable enough to put into production. But it is an excellent tool and it's used by probably millions at this point. Okay, so that's the 3 parts of Claude. Just jumping back, we've got chat for thinking and Cowork for doing and code for building. So when people throw those names around, that's what they really mean. Okay, so how does an AI interface work? You open it up, you'll see a chat, and it will be encouraging you to ask a question and get started. The thing to think about is the principle of one thread, one topic, and also don't let a thread get too long. The reason for those 2 points is that it's very easy to treat it as a conversation with a person. And if you were talking to me and we were talking about how things were going at work and a thing you needed to do this week, it's quite likely we'd cover a lot of topics in that conversation. Don't make the mistake of doing that in your chat with your AI, because it operates on the principle of context, which we'll cover in a moment. And the more context that you add, the more questions you ask, and the more answers it gives, the more it will go back and consider in each turn, each question and each answer. You can imagine that as one question and answer turns into 10, you blow through your tokens, which is the way that usage in AI is calculated, and you'll see a message from Claude saying, you've hit your limit. Please wait until X moment when your limit will renew. Secondly, imagine that you have a conversation going about one of your key clients or one of the team members in your team. There are a number of different topics, and there's some really good ideas that you've given and some good ideas that Claude has replied with that you want to get back to at a later date. It's very hard to search in Claude for a particular piece of information. You can search for a thread title easily enough, but searching for a snippet of text is hard. So therefore, I rename and limit my threads, my conversational chats, to one topic per thread. And I don't try not to keep them too long. And if it does get really long, then just ask Claude to summarize what's been said so far. Take that and paste it into a new thread. You'll be surprised how much better the answers are and how much further your tokens go by following these principles. So you write a question in and you get a reply. People call it a prompt because that's the engineering term, but to you and I, it's just a question and an answer. There are things that we can do to improve the quality of those answers. They include instructions, skills, your context, and all of that leads to greater productivity. And that, of course, is the holy grail of any kind of automated assistance or workflow automation. I've already mentioned that context is important and that a very long thread will become difficult for AI to hold in memory and consider on each turn. The reason for that is partly what I've just covered in terms of just holding it all in memory. Think of it as holding it all in your memory. But secondly, think of AI a bit like a human brain because it has been designed and modeled like a human brain. And if you were to go and say to a colleague, I'd like you to help me plan for a meeting, they will give you a general answer to your general question. They don't know what kind of meeting. They don't know who's going to be there. They don't know how you like to work, what role you perform, perhaps. So it's really important to give enough context in the asking of the question to take this generalist, trained on the internet large language model that we call AI and give it the context to give you a much more specialized answer, a much more focused answer. The best AI is the smallest AI, as Matt, our co-founder and CTO, famously says. And what he means by that is focus it, give it the information it needs to understand who you are, what you want from it, and which information it should focus on. And you will get much better answers. You'll get a much lower rate of errors and a much lower rate of mistakes. Mistakes in AI are often called hallucinations. It's just another fancy word for making a mistake and not telling you that it has done. Remember, it fails silently. However, this is a Goldilocks clause, and that is that you want it to have just enough context, but not too much. That's a lot of these things are topics that we will cover in future episodes, but enough to say you want to give it enough information to be very clear about what it needs to do and to do it well. Okay, so there are, and this is just Ollie speak, this is the world according to me. I think of it as 4 levels of mastery of AI tooling. So let's have a look at them. First of all, you've got level 1. That's your raw chat. That's opening up ChatGPT or Claude, either on your laptop or on the web or on your mobile, and typing in your question and getting an answer. It's a bit Russian roulette, but depending on how you phrase the question, you might get quite a good answer. And depending on the type of question, give me the latest Dan Brown book. That's pretty specific. You probably get quite a good answer. Give me the latest book that I might like. That's a lot harder because it doesn't know anything about you. The next level up is raw custom instructions. So custom instructions are something that you can set inside each of your AI projects. The custom instructions are literally, you are, I like, when I ask, you should answer in this way, don't answer in that way. So imagine that your custom instructions might be to give you answers that are UK specific because you are in the UK. You're not in Europe. You're not in America. You want it in English spelling, for example. Another custom instruction might be, I am this type of role and you are my advisor in that role. I'm a product leader, you are my product strategist. That immediately cuts down the context and focuses the answers on things that are related to product in my case. The next level up is skills. And you've probably heard people talk about skills. Skills are effectively a way to tell AI how to do something. If custom instructions tell it who it is and how you want the answers to be framed, skills are how to work through the answer or how to do the thing. Skills have absolutely blown the doors off of efficiency because they have allowed us to automate in a repeatable way tasks that we might perform. Give me a weekly report. give me a summary of what was said in Slack yesterday. These are the sorts of things that I use it for in my morning routine through Cowork each day. So skills are important, and that's a level that that really starts to get a lot more quality and consistency in your answers. And then last but not least, you've got your context. This is the background information, what Right Brain would call the tools that the agent is able to draw on to better answer your question. Again, don't give it your entire last year's workings as a text file. That's just too much information, and it will, in a RAG method, go through and just pick out things that it thinks are important clusters, and it will miss important factors, particularly noticeable when processing large amounts of numbers, because you miss a number and you really notice it. What you want to give it is a maybe a link to your landing page that says, I'm about to talk to a partner and I'd like you to help me to explain to them this particular part of our contract. Here is the contract, and the clause that I'm really interested in is Claude, clause 12. Imagine the focus and the accuracy. That's adding in your context. So how can you set this up for yourself? First of all, you go into your AI and you will create an account. You'll authenticate using Microsoft or Google, or you use your email address and password, and you'll be presented with chat. It will, like I said before, encourage you to just start chatting. I suggest that you first think about the types of chats you'd like to have and group them into buckets. Those buckets are projects in Claude, and you would go and create one, as I mentioned before, for marketing, for operations, for leadership, for reporting, for product, whatever it might be. Those are really important because they allow you to group your conversations within a particular topic or division of your work, if you will, into a particular bucket. And you can train and coach and set up the AI agent to talk to you in specific ways in each of those. The ways you do that, as I mentioned before, are your custom instructions. So you go into your strategy project, you set your custom instructions, and you say, I'd like you to talk to me this way, but not that way. I am this type of person. We are this type of business. This is the kind of role I have. These are some of our big goals. That's probably enough. You want to keep it fairly short, but also quite prescriptive. My feeling is do those two things, and you're already 5-10 times your quality of answer and the quality and your ability to automate the things that you do every day. Because let's be honest, the reason that we are all using AI is A, not to get left behind, because this is clearly a movement in technology that we don't want to miss out on. And B, we want to automate the admin in our daily lives, the things that technology always helps us automate through each step along the way. Email allowed us to automate the way that we wrote letters. AI allows us to automate the sorts of things we've just talked about. Then you would create your skills, and skills are created within each project. So in Claude, you go into chat, you go into your strategy project, and then you create your skills. Here's another tip. Ask Claude to help you create the skill. Tell it what you would like to do. I'd like a weekly summary of the emails that I sent out last week, and I'd like that summary to be presented in this way. And if you find that there are two emails to the same person, I'd like you to group them together. That's an example of what you would put in, and then Claude would give you back a skill. You refine it with Claude and a chat, and then you save that skill into the project. That skill will generally be triggered by a manual trigger. So it might be that you write weekly update into that project and you get this skill running. You look at the output and you think, I could definitely improve that. So you go in and you tell it to update the skill and you overwrite the skill into that project. This process actually has a lot of quirks, and I'm going to tell you about that in the future episodes. But the point is that creating skills is where we really automate the way that AI will answer questions and the way that AI will do things to make them repetitive and consistent. And then lastly, you add your context. There's a lot that I'm going to talk to you about in this area, and others will talk to you about in the coming weeks. But needless to say, garbage in, garbage out. Set up the project so it knows where, so you know that that's where that kind of conversation lives. Put your instructions in so it knows which role it needs to play, the guidelines, and how to answer you. Put in some skills so you can say, do this repetitive thing again and again and get a much more consistent output. And then add the background that it needs, the tools, as we would call them in Right Brain. And the payoff, the payoff is that you just get the best out of these tools without building things yourself or upgrading to Right Brain. But more about that another day. So what's next for me? Well, let's actually talk about that now. The next thing for me, having wanted to see how far I could get with Claude and how far I could get connecting Claude to Notion and using Notion as my store of state, my store of context, roadmap decisions I've made so that when I ask it a question about roadmap, it can go and retrieve that state, the current state of the roadmap, and give me an answer. Now, having got to the limit of what I'm able to achieve there and having discovered a lot of gotchas, I am now taking the natural step for someone who works at Right Brain, and I'm evolving and upgrading and migrating all of my automated workflows from Claude and Notion into Right Brain and into Right Brain agents. I will absolutely walk you through the things that I have done, the things that I have learned along the way. And I'll also talk to you about the other tools that I use, such as Whisper Flow, which I use for transcribing at pace large amounts of information into the chats that I'm having to get the best outcomes I can, because I can talk, you might notice, much faster than I can write. So the next episode will be the Temple of Claude. And this is really a love affair. And it's a love affair in the traditional Hollywood sense. It, just like indie, is love at first sight. I thought, this is amazing. Look what I can do with these tools. Look how much more efficient I can be. I won't forget things because I will set AI up to help me to not forget things. I won't have to spend my time on the dull admin tasks. I'll be able to focus on the high value tasks. And that is the experience of so many people. That's why this podcast exists, to help you to think about how you could apply these things to your daily life. But like any of Indiana Jones' love stories, it's pretty tortured. There's been a lot of bust-ups, and that will be, warts and all, provided to you in the next episode. So thank you for watching. I hope that that's been useful. Please subscribe so that you know that when we're releasing our next episode, and you can join the mailing list on the website as well. All the best, and we'll see you next time. And like Indy says, we're all making it up as we go along.